Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll give my quick update. I don't know if anyone else is going to join. This was actually an update from the last cycle, so it's kind of a little stale at this point, but it still reflects current reality. So I had the Guardian, formal Z3 solver, bare bones, just not even proof of concept so much as just proof that I could get something working in Z3. I created a very simple model of what the Kubernetes RBAC concept would look like, and then kind of put that into a very simple solver format. Got it running. It ran the solver and said, it was proven, but obviously it's just nothing more than a toy. What I hope to do beyond that is try a couple of different. There's Z3, of course, has several different modules. So I was using one that was the horn clause logic that was fairly similar to what something like Rego is using kind of in its DNA. It's based off of Datalog, and Datalog itself is horn clause based logic. So I figured I wasn't going too far afield by using that engine. But that said, Z3 has several other engines. So for robustness and also to kind of flesh out my understanding of the various options, that's probably my next step. Is to play around with some of Z3's solver capabilities, and then marry that to what Microsoft and AWS had published around how they were using Z3, and really kind of try to reproduce the type of things that they were doing. Obviously not in as much detail or with as many features, but at least try to give a flavor of what they were doing with Zokova and Tiros and the other features. That said, I've been slammed with some stuff I've been doing with sig-security assessment, as well as other stuff. I've been helping with OPA stuff, so it's kind of fallen on the back burner a bit. I was using the TOC guidelines, and actually that should really be a capital O. The TOC guidelines for what, like, if we were to create a project around Guardian, what would we have to do to get to kind of sandbox exit stage? And it's pretty clear the kind of metrics and the pitch that they're looking for is that we've got to get contributors and collaborators and users before they're even going to look at it. So I guess my shout out on this is, I'm happy to play around with this as a personal project and just edify my own learning and document everything I learn and play around with it, and perhaps even use it in terms of deploying something for Rego or something that augments Rego. But I think if we're going to get any traction on it and it's going to be useful to the community, it'd be great if we can get other people helping. And even if that help is just giving us real world problems that they're having that we can start digging into. But obviously, if there are people out there that are also interested who either want to learn about the solver or already understand the solver and want to add some code and add some capabilities, any and all the above, I think, gets us more momentum. And with the goal of getting some acceptance from CNCF. So, that, and, hey, if someone was willing, a company, CNCF, somebody was willing to kind of sponsor a postdoc project, I can stand up and add to that as well. And if we can get some matching funds, we could probably fund an intern or a postdoc, working over a summer, that kind of thing, or over even like winter break or something. So there are some resources that I'd be willing to throw at it. If we can get some other matching sponsorship, that would be, I think, highly useful. That's pretty much it on Guardian.
So,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just asking, has TOC provide any guidance on the postdoc project?
Sorry, who provided any guidance?
The TOC. Have you
No,
mentioned to? No.
no. That was just me throwing it out here to the group here first. No, I haven't. It was mentioned. So interestingly enough, not by me, but in one of the TOC updates, the sig-security person mentioned Guardian, and well, not by name, but the formal verification sig-security issue that I created as kind of one of their highlights. So great, but I mean, yeah. So that's the only reason that TOC would even know that this exists. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I can ask wrong. I brought up a similar issue, I think, ages ago to the TOC list, and I think now they have something called a research, like working group on CNCF level. I can ask around, see if there's already like existing infrastructure within CNCF that could help sponsoring. So for the sandbox, I remember if we want to have a sandbox project, we need to have like 2 TOC sponsorship or just one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was 2.
2, right? Okay.
Right. And I think it's premature. I don't think there's really anything yet to show. So I think, my ideal situation would be if we can get a couple of interested people to participate, get a core group of, ideally like 3 interested parties to contribute. So that's not just me kind of sitting in a vacuum.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that within a month or so that we could come up with something that's demonstrable to the TOC and say, hey, look, we reproduced something like AWS or Azure has, and we think that the broader CNCF Kubernetes community would love to use this if we expanded on it. So I think that would be the appropriate model.
Yeah. Have you talked to Scott recently?
I have not.
Okay. I will reach out to him, and I also know a guy from Ant Financial, which is the financial arm of Alibaba. I think they are also interested. They are looking at like new project that is finance related. I can reach out to them too. Yeah, I think I will ping the JP Morgan guy again. Yep.
Yeah, I think there's an imbalance of those who have the most pressing need or use cases are the people who don't have the time. And that leaves those who do have the time but are at the whimsy of whatever their org is doing. So come and go very inconsistently. I don't know how to solve that problem.
Well, anyway, it's great that you are thinking about the sandbox. I will definitely help, like promoting it, and yeah, we have a great starting place.
That's pretty much all I had on policy.
Cool. So, shall we moving on to the audit policy?
Yeah, so this was discussed quite a lot in SIG auth, which of course I was half listening. There are several different aspects, I guess, to it, and they're going to or saying they will piece it out a bit more, so that hopefully could separate some of the more like technical or performance concerns from, say, some of the more policy level ones. But I think there are parts maybe we should take a more active role in and help a little maybe, or become opinionated on those parts.
Like which aspects do you think we should pay more attention to, or like providing our suggestions?
So let me pull it up real quick. So for instance, like the goals include consistent audit policy API. Let's see.
For the core?
Yeah. Oh, so audit class. This is a good example of something that maybe we should think about. Is that a good way to do the policy for defining it? Having classes, do we want to keep doing classes? Is this a place we can potentially show some of, used as an example for the Guardian? Be another place.
Okay, so who's mainly driving this now? Like who should we talk to mostly?
Yeah, in the SIG-auth, someone took fairly good notes of the SIG-auth meeting. Let's see. Yeah, the person who's driving it is, what was his name? His name's on the PR. I don't know where he's from, what company. Why am I blanking? But
I don't seem to have access to I need to request access to the SIG-auth meeting agenda, but.
It says here, it says join to Kubernetes dev. Are you not a member of Kubernetes dev? And wait 10 minutes for access.
I've made some commitment, some issues, some GHIs in Kubernetes, but I don't know, maybe I don't have the right access.
Yeah.
I put in the chat of course, 10 minutes, that's, I guess, Google speed for this.
So just looking at the Kubernetes docs now policy. So this is for their audit sync policy.
This is the,
The audit sync policy differs from legacy audit runtime policy. This is because the API object serves different use cases. This policy will continue to evolve to serve more use cases. There we go.
Yeah.
It's also clear.
I think they also said it's really not, maybe it wasn't really audit, and that audit was the wrong word to use, because audit would imply, like, the compliance level things, which they can't promise.
So what are they looking at?
It's in the action items. They are trying to drum up these specific use cases to help narrow the focus. If you really need where the filtering policy should be applied, and if this could scale at all. And is there kind of field level filtering, which would require indicating sensitivity at a resource level? And I wonder in the channel.
Okay. It's interesting to see the runtime policy interface. That's
yeah.
from
I carried
Falco?
that over- Yeah, I carried that over from the sig-security call that we had today. Michael Ducey mentioned, well, I think Dan had mentioned that there was a TOC discussion about it. And then Michael was on the call and mentioned that, yes, this is a Falco initiative. I wasn't present for the TOC discussion, so I'm not sure what the delta is between OPA and RPI is. Ash, who was on the sig-security call, didn't seem to know what RPI was. But
Wait, RPI is a new thing here?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, wow.
well, it's the
Yeah.
first time I've heard of it. I don't know how new it is, but the version 1 draft looks like it was like started by Chris Nova sometime this month.
Oh, so they're trying to have a standard way between like Falco and OPA and whatever else. Is that it?
I think they're definitely kind of trying to define like the standard interface for stuff that needs runtime policy and other stuff. But sure, their primary focus is on Falco.
I find runtime somewhat ambiguous.
I mean, in the Falco world, that's, very simply, things that they can run through BPF, right? Yeah, BPF.
Right.
So,
I guess, I mean, it's all about the level of granularity, right? Like, there's always some sort of gap and point where you have in time or in space where you put that evaluation. And there's a whole like span from the bit level to the API admission or company policy, I guess would be even above that. Like there's a whole, and I find like runtime to be somewhat hard to, like, is pod, when a pod starts up, is that considered runtime? Or when the container runtime like images?
I would say, I can't actually remember. I've actually walked through all the Falco stuff before. I want to say that they scope, yes, they would have some visibility on, that might be, well, let me finish. They might have some visibility on the node. So as the node spins up pods and containers within those pods and whatnot, Falco, the tool, probably does have some kernel level visibility in that. But I think the policy they're talking about here is probably more about once the container is up and running, what's it doing? That's my guess, and that's why it kind of fits more along in terms of OPA, and that OPA runs as a sidecar, so you're really kind of doing things on a working pod with working containers after everything is kind of bootstrapped. So, and if you look at like a Falco policy, it's really just like, these syscalls are allowed or these syscalls are not, or these access to these mounts are okay, but access to these other mounts are blacklisted, that kind of thing. So it kind of assumes that like everything is kind of in a stable running state, I think. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in OpenShift land or OpenShift 4 land, where like configuring the operating system, including like configuring the kernel arguments and the boot image, the image of the OS is done through the Kubernetes API. So it's kind of like, it's much more circular. Like it doesn't make sense to say necessarily that something is bootstrapped or that, because it's dynamic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, right, if everything is done through the API, then there's no like special bootstrapping process when you're making an API call.
And everything's much more mutable in a way.
So like literally there's no, like how do you go from like bare metal to like magically you've got an API server ready to accept calls? Isn't there some
there's a bootstrap phase of kind of, a little bit of a bootkube sort of way. But it's mostly things are spun up by each of the operators. So the networking set up by the networking operator and the other various networking, the DNS, the Kube API server, etcd, etc.
Yeah, and actually that's a good question. I don't know how. I don't even know, and I know OPA better than Falcon. I don't even know how OPA relates to operator policy, if you will. So that's certainly this RPI stuff would relate.
Cool. Thanks for sharing this. Probably reach out to Chris at some point.
Yeah, I think from a high level, it's pretty clear that even at the TOC level down, there are various discussions about like what is policy, and everything kind of needs a policy, but yet they could be very, very context specific. So like you say, from everything from the bits and from the CPU up to these very high level hand wavy kind of administrative policies that are more about like human processes. And nobody seems to be converging on like, here's the design pattern we ought to be using. Or to your point, Erica, like here's an API, and it should just become part of the API services that everybody can call and define their policy or get their policy and use the policy. Nobody seems to be concerned about that not existing or that not being the way forward. And at the same time, nobody's kind of stepping up, myself included, to say, hey, I've got a great idea. Here's how it should all work. So I think there's probably a place for this group to want to be that, or to at least advocate for that. But that's biting off a huge. It does touch like everything, right? Because every element could have a policy. So how do you wrap something that's like a universal API?
And is that why do you really want to do that? It seems like that maybe at least we could take a stance on don't add a policy interface or whatever.
Well, yeah, I think that's where my head is going to the place where you don't want everything to have its own policy definition. You kind of want to have like very clear interface. Like here are things that absolutely must have knowledge of a policy, and only those things should really have some API level interaction with the orchestration engine to reason about policy. Everything else should just kind of like inherit it somehow. But that policy bus, for lack of a better word, doesn't exist.
Where is the gap between OPA as a project, not necessarily as what it is today, evolving into something more like that?
OPA as it's a good question. I mean, OPA as a project, I think, is really just trying to keep up with, and in particular with Kubernetes, you know, gatekeeper, and like, how do we get this thing deployed in a really robust way, and simultaneously kind of getting people over the learning curve of Rego, which, you know, it's a less convenient but more powerful way to articulate policy. But then that immediately begs the question of anyone who tries to use it, like, oh wow, I never really thought of policy as being this useful, powerful, and, you know, by that token, I have to really understand what I'm doing. Whereas if it was just kind of like copy and paste some YAML from this example, and now I've got a policy, that doesn't take a lot of understanding, right? It's kind of understand that, you know, just take for lack of a better example, like a network policy. Like, I know I got to have ports and a protocol, and I just copy and paste from some example. Now I've got a firewall rule that makes sense to me. But when you're trying to reason about, say, admission control, you've got to reason about, like, what's the structure I'm trying to project on my cluster? Am I trying to partition things into different namespaces? Am I trying to create kind of a label structure that, you know, has a hierarchy? You know, we've talked about hierarchical namespaces and you know, multi-tenant and all that. So you've got to conceptually get your head wrapped around, like, what am I trying to accomplish here? Then you've got to encode that into some sort of structure, like labels and namespaces and config maps and attributes on the various resources. And then you've got to articulate that into Rego, right? So can Rego even articulate what you just tried to create? Like, does it literally have like all the function calls and macros and substring, regular expression matching, and all that stuff that it would just need? I think that's where open is right now. And then from a gatekeeper perspective, like, can we now deploy that in a cluster efficiently and make sure it works the way we think it should? So that's kind of my understanding of exactly where things are today. So yeah, trying to be kind of the Uber interface to everything that might possibly need a policy definition, whether it's Falco or, you know, Prometheus or a storage plugin or, you know, an encryption plugin or anything like that. You know, like you can look at, like, I was just looking at like encryption. So if you want to encrypt everything, all your secrets in etcd, there's an encryption configuration. Well, it's got a policy. It's got, yep, what key do I use, and like, how do I rotate that key, and how, you know, what algorithm should I use, what crypto algo should I use, and how many, you know, retries, and what's the cache time, and all that stuff, right? So, you know, it's not a very complicated policy. It doesn't have like Boolean logic or, you know, any kind of crazy, you know, checks, but it's a policy configuration that has a goal. So that's, anyway, I'm off in the weeds. I digress, but
no, yeah, I liked your weeds. It was good. That makes sense.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's good weed. Shall we reach out to Chris Noah?
Yeah.
Like, invite her over for
what company is she at now? I can't keep track.
She's at Falco. Go.
Oh, she's at it. Okay.
All right, I guess Systig. Yeah, Systig.
Systig.
Yeah, I wonder if for like sponsoring, if one of those kind of like a smaller, more security focused vendor is the best, you know, case, the best chance at like pushing things forward.
You know, my take on that is that so OPA, Systig / Falco, my guess is that you're just so focused on like finishing the work they've started and like adding features and, you know, making enhancements for their kind of power user community. I kind of get the sense that, like, you know, and in fact, I did talk to Michael Ducey early on about like, hey, how could we go OPA and Falco? And, you know, there was, you know, Torin was on those chats, and there was all sorts of interest, but I think when it comes down to like, I've got, 10 volunteers and they've only got a limited amount of time, and we've got a backlog of, 20 critical, patches or enhancements we want to make, kind of refactoring always falls to the bottom. And certainly refactoring with like kind of, abstraction and re-engineering an interface really falls to the bottom. So I think it would have to come, I almost kind of like the idea of like the financial service users or the Alibabas of the world coming in from the top-down approach and saying, hey guys, we understand you're trying to add these very deep technical capabilities, but let's not lose sight of the benefits of having this overarching manageable version of policy that we can actually work with. Because when you guys all, when we have OPA and SysTig and Falco and Prometheus and encryption and all that, and we have to manage 35 different types of policies, that just doesn't really work. And it becomes very fragile. And it violates, don't repeat yourself and all these, benefits that they can probably articulate better than I can. But I think having someone who's really operating things at scale come in and define, hey, here are the problems we're having. Here, this would be the benefit of having a kind of a unified policy abstraction. And maybe they'd have some concrete thoughts of what that might look like. Maybe they'd say, look, we want it to be an operator, and we just want it to handle all this stuff, or we want it to be an API, or whatever that is. I think those power users would probably be a better sponsor, for lack of a better word, and maybe in the concrete sense of actually sponsoring something.
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't know how to implement it. That's where they probably turn it over to us and say, well, go work with Kubernetes SIGs and like figure out like, get them on board and figure out how to implement it. I think they would be the ones that would appreciate it, because otherwise the individual projects, the little security and storage and SIG off, I mean, they're just trying to, I think they're just trying to get functionality working for their own little slice. In a positive way, right? Not trying to take a shot. I'm just saying,
right,
trying to get things done.
Right.
This is kind of an optimization.
Okay, so let's reach out to Chris Noah, and see we can collaborate or just push forward the unified policy abstraction concept. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think as a very first start, maybe we can get her to present here on one of our call. And I mean, maybe we can have that debate. I don't know what the right structure is. If we have OPA and Falco on the same call, or two separate calls, and have like a third, debate call. But however we do that, maybe we should actually drill down into like, what is the delta between OPA and time policy interface, and how does that relate to the dynamic audit policy, and how does that relate to other areas? But maybe just the first step is get Chris to present, and then maybe get OPA.
Yeah, sounds great. Let's see. Okay. So anything else we should cover?
Who's going to the next KubeCon? That's coming up too soon.
Yeah, so my visa status doesn't look well. It's like glacier slow now.
Yeah, so, that sounds about right.
So I probably wouldn't make it to San Diego.
All right, that
Would
sucks.
you be there?
Yeah, I'll be there. I did my normal be on a panel. I think that's someone else submitted it.
Okay. So I applied our working group like little slot at the contributor summit for the SIG and work group. What they called meet to something. So I think I can tell the organizer that you can go over there and like meet developers, do some evangelizing.
I'll have to. I don't know when is that. Which day is that contributor? That's on like Sunday, right?
I don't know. I haven't booked my plane ticket yet.
If I wasn't going to be able to come Sunday and Monday, so but and I think unfortunately that's when all the SIG meetups happen. But I may fly down Tuesday when I free up. If there's any, I don't know if there's any events or any of the sig-security folks, anyone is getting together, but I can always pop down Tuesday.
There's like 3 or 4 different something security days.
Yeah, there's just a lot of security days.
This is a useful thing I found from here on the Falco effort.
That's from sandbox to incubation, right?
Possibly. Continuous intelligence platform for Kubernetes. That's something new to me.
That's interesting.
It's useful. This document is well organized. It's great. I would.
It's better than SIG-auth meeting minutes.
Yeah. Kubernetes event support.
Okay, cool. So for my action items from today's meeting, I will try to reach out to more folks for the Guardian project. I think, well, just procedure-wise, it won't be that difficult to get the sandbox status, but we do need contributors and also users that help setting up the whole use case and the other stuff. Okay, and for Chris Noah, like, should we reach out to personally or just commenting on the doc? And
no, I can email her. I've got her email address.
Okay, can you CC me and Erica as well? So
Sure.
Okay, cool. Hopefully she can make the next meeting.
Yeah.
Or we can switch to the weekly basis if there are a lot of stuff now.
That might make sense because let me look at like KubeCon is in 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's like 4 weeks until the KubeCon. I guess.
Yeah, I can share my visa status every meeting. Okay, cool.
Well,
So
I
yeah.
heard that the U.S. government has a lot of places that they could use some more automatic policy verification. Speed up their systems.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so Robert.
Make the most controversial use cases ever.
Oh God.
Our poor users are monitoring these groups. All right.
All right. Robert, please help reach out to Chris, see if she can make next week. Say.
We'll do that.
Oh, thank you so much. And for the dynamic audit policy, I will take a look and maybe chat with other folks, see if we can pick up or leading in at least some aspect.
Yeah, I think Tim is of course pretty active on that part of it, so
Cool.
he's a good person to reach out to.
Okay. Okay, sounds great. Shall we adjourn the meeting for today?
Sounds good.
Oh, one more thing that was interesting is immutable fields for the API. That's pretty awesome. That changes the game a little bit if you have things that aren't mutable. Sorry, just if anyone's interested.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you guys next week.
Okay. See you.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.